Hello and welcome to UltraHuman. My name is Rachel and I am here to help you be your best human. And today I'm going to do that by going over some of these things that I have found in conversations with people as well as in a lot of research about how we can overcome hunger when it comes to trying to implement something like an eating window or a fasting schedule. So first of all, I think that it's very important to understand why we are doing something. For that reason, there'll be a card up here about the fasting video that I did last week that describes some of the benefits of fasting. And I think that addressing the confusion around hunger and just that knowledge is power is going to be one of the most significant tools in our toolbox. So first, I want to just go over a couple of scenarios and some formulas that we have in our minds and go over the fallacies that are involved with those. So the first one is this idea of tummy empty equal hungry. Tummy full equal full. That is just not the case. And I think that we are all aware of this in practice, and I don't know where it gets lost in translation exactly that that's not how our bodies work. I think that's just kind of the sort of thermodynamics model that we've all sort of come to think of, like the calories in, calories out model. Bodies are very intelligent based on eons of being on this planet and what has worked best to keep us alive long enough to stick it out and help future generations. So let's just think about a couple thought experiments. Now, we know these days, today, if you're going to have white bread, you could probably sit there on a couch and eat an entire loaf of white bread if you had a reason to do that. Certainly, let's think of maybe something more like cinnamon buns or something like that. You could sit there and eat those until you were sick. But if you went out into a field and you found yourself a few handfuls of actual wheat shaft germ stuff, you would find that it would be incredibly difficult to eat more than a couple of handfuls of that, and there's some pretty significant reasons for that. First of all, when they refine a grain like wheat, they remove all of the fats from it, so you're taking away any possibility to be satiated by the fat content. They take away most of the fiber content, which is really the only thing that gets left in there when you have a whole grain bread, is that they leave in a lot of the fiber. They're still taking out a lot of the fats. They're degrading a lot of the proteins, and they're also taking away any benefit of, like, say, if it was sprouted. All of those things in an actual handful of wheat out of a field are going to make you feel more satisfied after you're done with just a couple handfuls of it. Now, on the other hand, you're a wild human, you're out there and it's late August and you come across a pristine blackberry bush, and it's going to be in your best interest to eat as many of those berries as you can, not because you're hungry right now, but because you're going to be hungry in a couple months. And they have some of the most accessible fuel that you can convert into something that you can store in your body as fat and burn up later as energy when you need it in the months ahead when there's going to be limited food resources. So it's in our body's best interest to turn off that full signal. So again, we have a different idea in our mind of, like, what does it mean to be full? Tummy full, feel full. That's obviously not the case. We all know that we've gorged ourselves on whatever it is, if it's sweet snacks or Chinese food, things that are typically very high in refined carbohydrates and maybe even sugar, maybe even that snuck in sugar. So when we're eating those berries, we put all those calories on, we turn it into fat. That's good for us. When we wake up at 9 a.m., we are putting a breakfast bar in our mouth that has refined carbohydrates and refined sugars and probably sweeteners, as like the berry things, berry sweet breakfast bar thing. All those things are working against us because we're spiking our insulin and ghrelin levels, And those things are what's telling us that we need to put more food in our body. Second tip is going to sound like jumping the gun, but that is to restrict yourself to eating windows. And I'm going to say at this point, don't worry about the time of day that your eating windows are. We're not going to start skipping breakfast or anything just yet. But if you're going from like a grazing eating style where you're just eating a little bit all of the time, or you're going from like, say, 6 to 10 meals a day, I'm going to challenge you to limit yourself to 4 meals a day. So we're talking about a breakfast, maybe like a brunch, a late lunch, and a dinner time. And what this is going to do is a couple things. You're going to discipline your schedule so that you know exactly what times of day you're eating. You're going to discipline your mind because you know that you're not going to starve in between breakfast and brunch if you don't eat that cookie in the 2 or 3 hours that are in between those meals. So you're disciplining your mind, but you're also disciplining your hormone secretion in your body because all of those things are based on a rhythm. These big spikes of ghrelin that tell our body that we're hungry, those things are happening at the times when we would normally eat. And rather than having an empty tummy equaling more and more hunger off into infinity, if you can imagine what that would be like if we were wild humans and you got hungry and just like eventually became a crazed psycho and like couldn't focus on anything, I don't think there'd be many of us around. So we get these big spikes of hunger that motivate us to go out and get food, but then they go away and we actually feel pretty good. That's what I've found, is that you feel pretty good once that hunger pain has gone away and you can kind of just feel your empty tummy, and that's kind of that time when you start getting those stomach growls and things like that when you've skipped a meal. And notice how you don't die and you don't go insane, and we really just make it through that. So restricting yourself down to, like, let's just say four meals a day is gonna make it easier. Then we can actually start pulling the reins in on what time those outside eating windows are. And that's gonna help you get to a point where you're actually going to start releasing that human growth hormone that comes along with hitting that fasting point. You're going to get your insulin levels and your insulin sensitivity under control, which means that you're also going to be more sensitive to the full hormone leptin. And all of these things are going to work together in your favor greatly. And you might find that just by restricting yourself down to those specific eating times, you start losing weight without even having to implement a fast, because a lot of us don't realize just how often we're eating an outrageous volume of food. And so just being more thoughtful about what's going into our mouths at certain times of the day, we're going to plan ahead, and we're just going to be a lot more thoughtful about what we're consuming. And that might be all you need to achieve a desired amount of weight loss. My third tip, and I'm just going to leave it here because I could get into this for hours, is drink more water with salt. Big caveat there. So a lot of times when we think we're hungry, our body is craving specific kinds of nutrients, and often that's just salt or water. So again, if you think about wild humans, we go out into the world and it's going to be hard to always have water available too, and a lot of the water that we're going to find is in food. So it makes sense that the thirst signals and the hunger signals in our body are not necessarily always going to be different, especially if we need a combination of nutrition and water. Our body's just going to tell us to go consume stuff. Start thinking of that hunger signal as more of a, my body wants me to go consume something right now. And that doesn't necessarily have to be food. So getting water in you in other ways, such as drinking lots of soups and things like that, is another way that I have found helps keep you satiated more throughout the day, which you wouldn't think necessarily that like a brothy soup would make you feel so full, but it really does. You're going to get more of those signals, the physical signals to your brain, like the stretch receptors and things that are going to tell you that you have a stomach that is full, even if it is mostly full with water. You have specific hormone things that are going to sense all of the fats that are in there and all the different kinds of nutrition, and your body just knows that that stomach is stretched out and full. And because it's not typically, as long as you don't fill it up with like, bake a sugar broth, your body is not going to be shutting off that full signaling. And so you're going to be able to get through those meals and get through the in-between time in the meals better, while being better hydrated. And then also adding a whole salt, like a Celtic sea salt or something like that, to your water, just a little pinch, barely enough to taste. That's kind of how I gauge it. If it tastes salty, then I've probably put too much salt in my water bottle. Just pour a little bit out and fill it back up. You don't need to worry about consuming too much salt when you're consuming it in this way, because a lot of the salt consumption that we really need to worry about is coming from packaged foods. And again, we're talking about refined salt and refined sodium. These things in too much in our diets are going to cause problems. But adding a little bit of whole Celtic sea salt, and again, being just generally more thoughtful about your food, you're not going to run into a problem with too much salt. And I will have links, if you want to debate me about this, in the description below regarding salt and our body's need for salt. So those are the 3 tips that I have for you today, and that is just, first of all, knowledge is power. Understand how your body works. It is not working against you. Work with your body to make these things work, and that's what being ultra-human is really all about. 2, make sure that you start to get yourself disciplined into an eating window, because it's those midnight snacks and the in-between meal snacks that are really killing us in terms of not only literally killing us because of our hormone regulation and putting on weight and everything, but it's just demoralizing when we feel like we're working so hard and we're not seeing the progress that we think that we deserve from the work that we've put in. And a lot of times I think it's just because we're not being mindful enough about the way that we're putting things into our body. And 3rd, be better hydrated. So drinking more soups and broths and putting some salt in your water and making sure that you consume lots of water. All of these things I think are going to really help us overcome those hunger pains that we might feel if we're trying to get into a restricted eating window, or even jumping into a bigger, like a 24 or 48 hour fast. I will have more of these videos coming up very soon, so if you enjoyed this, please subscribe, and I will have videos right over here for you. And have a great day. You get out there and be your best human, and good luck.